guys, it's Gamer Ahmer here. So today I wanted to talk about something that has been on my mind. So as the year kind of finishes out and I start to reflect on some things, there is something that we need to talk about. So gaming has changed so much since the 90s, and I can't tell if it's for the better or for the worse. So let's go ahead and talk about this. So if you guys have played video games or been in this whole entire video game scene for most of your life, or at least throughout the 80s and 90s, then you'll know that there is so much stuff going on today that is so much different than it used to be. So a lot of it has to do with time. So as we get older and we have these jobs we have to provide, we just have so much going on, and it seems like, there's just never enough time for this. As you can see behind me, it is no secret that I collect video games as well. Now I do play them, but time is always limited, and there's no possible way that I can play all of this within a year. So I do have quite the backlog of games. So back in the day, in a much simpler time, it seemed like there was all the time in the world. You'd get home from school, you just pop in a video game, and you just start playing, whether it was by yourself or with your friends. And it just seems like that is something of the past, and just something that we'll never be able to get more of unless, one day we're lucky enough to retire and kind of enjoy this whole entire collection. So time is something that has definitely changed. Now also, another thing that I want to talk about is the price. So it always seems that money is pretty much a factor depending on anything that you talk about. So a lot of people know that the video game market has went on an uptick. Now some things are starting to level out, but they'll never be as cheap as they once were. So back in a simpler time, you wouldn't really get everything that you possibly wanted or even thought about buying. You pretty much got games that you wanted, certain games around your birthdays, around holidays, things like that. You would save up your allowance and you would just get what they had. You didn't know about all of these different odds and ends, the entire libraries, collecting anything and everything. You just appreciated and kind of collected just what you could actually afford and what you wanted to play. Then you would trade in those games and you would just get more stuff. So with this entire bubble that everyone's talking about, one day it may pop. Well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But that's not what, the problem is. It seems that a lot of people want to get in on this video game collecting. They want to kind of market in on this where they can make a few bucks along the way. And, everyone is a part of this now. So money is definitely something that needs to be talked about, which is so much different. I just remember back in the day going to flea markets, yard sales, finding games super cheap, being able to appreciate those games that I found. I wasn't picky. I didn't pass over things. I just kind of picked up whatever game I could afford, what game was there, and I would just go home and play it. There wasn't really, a need to be picky or anything else. It was just kind of what was there. So as we kind of get older, it's definitely more difficult to find some of the better titles for, a cheaper price, unless you are emulating or you know how to do that stuff. But some people who just want that physical media, want the same hardware that they grew up playing, that don't have time to emulate stuff, don't know how to do all that, it is a little bit expensive and pricey at times. So that is something that is way different than it used to be, and I'm not sure it's going to get any better. Now another thing that has definitely changed with gaming, as opposed to the 90s in particular, who remembers getting home from school or wherever you were, and you would go over your friend's house to play certain video games, and you would actually bring your memory card, your controller, a specific game, or even a console, so that you could bring it over your friend's house and you guys would play multiplayer, in person, next to one another. You guys would pass off the controllers when you were going through the campaign, and you would just take turns playing and, beating these games together. as opposed to all of this online stuff that there is today. I just specifically remember going over my friend's house, playing the Nintendo 64. I would bring my Atomic Purple controller. She would have her favorite controllers as well. We would just pop in a Nintendo 64 game and we would just play for hours. We would play co-op games. We used to play all kinds of different like fighting games. Then of course Tony Hawk Pro Skater. We would battle against one another. Just so much cool and fun times that I used to have actually having that like multiplayer experience where it wasn't online, where games didn't take forever to load. I can't tell you countless times where I've popped in a new game, went to go ahead and play it, was so excited, just wanted to just get the game rolling, and then I just fell asleep waiting because the update took hours upon hours upon hours. And it was just, a nightmare. Just something that I didn't experience back in the day. Like, I had so many fond memories of. Now, another thing that I've noticed is a lot different. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of say this in a term of like a spectator sport. Now, not really watching people play video games, online like we do today, but watching your older cousins and your family members play some of those games that maybe you weren't really allowed to play back in the day. So I can remember watching my older cousin play through Mortal Kombat, and I would sit on the couch, and sometimes you'd have the controller in your hand, like you thought you were actually playing, and I would just kind of watch him just play these games that I wasn't able to play at the time until I got a little bit older and I could understand a little bit more. So I've noticed that that is something that just has been lost. Now, you could say it's pretty much the same thing watching someone play online, but it was something so much different than, watching in person and then taking turns, kind of throwing the controller to one another. I just remember so many times playing the Nintendo Entertainment System. We would go through and rotate out through the levels of trying to get through every single world and every single level, and just advance. And then it would take hours upon hours, and once you died, you would hand off the controller to someone else, and then you could go ahead and just keep trying to cycle through and beat every single level and just keep going together. And then if it took too long, you would just turn off the TV but keep the system on. You would go outside, play for a little while, and then come back inside, just turn on the TV, and just play like everything, was still there, like you just left off again. I feel like that whole like spectator sport in person is much different than it is today with the online play, watching people live stream and everything else. Still very fun, but it's different if you experienced it a little bit different back in the 90s. And then on to a big topic that is very much different than it is today. Arcades. So I remember going on vacation with my family back in the day. We would go into a restaurant. Now this would be like a all-you-can-eat buffet type of breakfast style. And instead of sitting there and waiting and just eating food, me and my brother would run off. We'd go to the arcade that they had in this little tiny room attached to the restaurant, and we would just play Carnival. And we would sit there and play through a lot of these shooting style games, these light gun games, and we would just have a blast. Our parents would give us a cup. We would break whatever it was, a $10 bill, $5 bill. We would get tons of quarters, and we would just go to town playing all of these different arcade games. I even remember that one of the spots in New Jersey as well with the Carnival machine, they would actually have a Dance Dance Revolution machine. And I loved playing that. I used to play that game all the time. I used to love it so much that anytime I went to an arcade or on vacation or somewhere, I tried to find that game. And I still do that today. I try and find that anywhere that I go. So that is something that you just don't really see anymore. Yeah, there's arcades. Yeah, there's certain games where they have bowling alleys, they have pool tables, they have a restaurant, they have a bar. But it's just a different feeling. And you have all of these like cheap little games that are definitely trying to get like those ticket-based, for points so that you could redeem them for some of the rewards that may not even be the best. But of course, it just makes that place money. It's just nothing like it used to be, where you could just enjoy those simpler moments. And I remember going to the mall, and at my mall, they had a laser tag with an arcade attached to it. I would go there on the weekends, get dropped off, have to call on the payphone to give updates throughout the night and to let everyone know when to actually pick me back up again at the mall. And I would just have a blast, only spending a few dollars, getting unlimited rounds of, laser tag, and then waiting my turn to play all of these different games like air hockey, the Dance Dance Revolution machine that was always packed. There was always people standing by it. Just that whole, feel of being included in this whole entire gaming community that started in person back in the day. And then even an arcade that they had upstairs in the mall that used to have unlimited play where you could spend the night. And yes, you would bring a really awesome sleeping bag. You would have to sign some forms, and then you would get dropped off at the mall, get let into the special entrance with this arcade, and everyone would have a sleepover. But no one would really be sleeping. You'd just be playing the games. You'd be playing all of these different racing games. You'd play some of the games that you just wanted to play. Some of them would even be on free play so that you didn't have to keep paying money and, paying all these quarters. It was just a blast, a fun time. Everyone, just had so much fun playing the Mortal Kombat games, Street Fighter, Killer Instinct, all of the Dance Dance Revolution games, just so many different Sega racing games. It's just something different about gaming back then as opposed to now. Now, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of great things about gaming today than what there used to be, but there are just so many memories that are just so hard to try and recreate over those years. Do you guys remember any of this stuff differently from back then in either the 80s or the 90s? I mostly grew up in the 90s, so that's kind of what I hone in on. Is there anything that I said that's a little bit different? Just let me know in the comments below, and of course, I just wanted to share these memories with you guys, see if I was the only one who lived through this particular way, and just let me know if I'm wrong. So of course, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Go ahead and check out my other videos, and stay tuned for more.